I'm particularly enthusiastic about the fact that a number of people in this continent, in Europe, are paying attention to this small and so-called informal group called the Bilderberg Group. Because, well, we are all, as Europeans, we should be familiar with this group actually, because it's the policies that are being discussed within that group that are being applied all across Europe by most governments, by the European Commission, and, well, the European citizens are feeling the brunt of those policies. When we see a drive to reduce the role of government, of democracy, and to give more space to the market, well, that's the Bilderberg ideology that is at work. When you hear the constant ask for more competitiveness by just reducing direct and indirect labor costs, it's another facet of the Bilderberg ideology. In French, we have a name for that. We call it la pensée unique. And that's exactly what it is. It is exactly that. But you know, they like to discuss these things between, well, business and political decision makers in cozy places, probably away from prying looks of people like Giorgio and others. And well, I'm glad that this is being exposed, because these things are worth debating, but then debating in the structures of our democracies. These are called parliaments, these are called governments, but I would say these should be called society at large. I mean, society needs to discuss these issues and decide whether we want to be ruled by us, ourselves, or being ruled by basically the interests of big business. Now, a last word, let's look at who profits from these policies, because this is fact, this is not just a slogan. Well, from the start of the economic and financial crisis back in 2007, 2008, well, basically 1 or 2% of the Europeans have become richer. All the others have stagnated or have become poorer or more, have gone into a more precarious state. This is what policy making is all about in Europe at the moment. So policy should be the defense, the political life, democracy should be about defending the general interest. And I believe that the general interest is a bit more than the interest of a tiny, tiny minority that basically is defended by the Bilderberg groups.
Mr. Lamberts, in the past, several members of the European Commission or the European Parliament attended Bilderberg conferences, and a few parliamentarians asked questions to them in the context of the Parliament to know what they did and if they can address the Parliament on this issue, and usually they answered in a very fluffy way. Can you do you have a reaction on this?
Well, there's something totally wrong about that, because, well, you know, it's normal for policymakers, and I'm doing that, to attend meetings, including with business. I'm going to the European Business Summit on a regular basis, and I'm taking part in panels and in discussions. But the big difference between this and doing Bilderberg is actually, at least what I'm saying at the European Business Summit, what others, commissioners are saying, for instance in Davos, is recorded, is public. So we know what stance that they are taking. They know, people can know what stance I am taking when I'm talking to business. The problem with Bilderberg is this is a closed door meeting, where probably discussions and positions are being taken by policymakers who should be accountable, that positions are maybe taken that might be hardly defendable publicly. And by the way, let's take a look at one of the major endeavors of the spirit of the Bilderberg Group, and that is this TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade Treaty. It's quite striking that people decide to enter negotiations with the United States. So 28 governments give a mandate to the Commission. This is all behind closed doors, secret mandate. I'm sure that the spirit is very congruent with the spirit of the Bilderberg Group, yet it has never been debated publicly, let alone voted. I mean, there was no parliament voting a mandate for negotiation with the states. It is this obsession with secrecy that really puts democracy at stake. And when elected officials fail to convincingly be accountable for what they are doing in these closed doors meetings, that then citizens should be suspicious. You know, we can ask questions to commissioners or to fellow MEPs or former MEPs who are going there. They might still say, well, you know, I'm doing what I want with my free time. Yet, if people are not convinced or not willing to be accountable, I do believe that citizens should sanction them, and the best sanction is basically not to re-elect them. if you cannot be transparent enough about what you're doing and what you are really defending, because of course all politicians will tell you that they defend the general interest, that they would cater for the poorest and those who are the most precarious in society, yet how come that they do things, well, a majority of them do things that basically benefit only 1 or 2% of the population. There's a hiatus between the two, and well, the only way to keep them accountable is to, well, threaten them with electoral sanction. If you do not defend the general interest, we won't re-elect you.
It is 60 years now that the Bilderberg exists, and the press do not speak about it. And what is your impression about it? What is your sensation?
Well, I know it's sometimes difficult because even on European affairs, on well, more open situations like the European Parliament, it's sometimes hard to get coverage. But then again, they will say, well, you know, maybe it's not that important. But then I cannot fail to recognize that Bilderberg has also a number of large companies, of course, sponsoring the event. The same companies may end up being advertising in a number of press outlets. And of course, you know, if well, reporting on stuff may put you at odds with one of your suppliers of advertising money, that can put the media in an awkward situation. I've seen that before in other occasions where, you know, a major bank that I criticized and that I wanted to criticize in a newspaper in an article, well, the article was not taken up, well, because the same bank was also an advertiser with that newspaper. I'm seeing that all the time. So that may be an explanation. But also, you know, covering Bilderberg requires also investigation, and that means time. And you know, well, the way media work today, it's a low-cost kind of work, where they will pick up basically the easy things to do, pick up press releases and stuff like that. They have, well, even if many journalists would like to do investigations, they do not have the means to do it because, well, their bosses will tell you, well, I need production, and I will not pay you for a couple of weeks or a couple of months to investigate something like the Bilderberg Group. So the work that is being done by you and the people here is certainly welcome in that, but there's a lot more to do to expose actually, because I do believe that transparency, visibility puts pressure on the people. Then when it becomes too obvious for a politician that he or she favors narrow interests, it becomes politically unbearable. Case in point, remember, when LuxLeaks came out, I mean, the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, meanwhile, became President of the Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. Revelation of LuxLeaks. And he may argue this was all legal, and maybe it was, but he disappeared for 6 days, 6 straight days. Why? For a legal thing? Well, it may have been legal, but once it became known, it was perceived as totally illegitimate. And which is why he went into hiding. Well, the more we expose what elected policymakers are doing with big business, the less easy it will be for them to continue doing it.
What is your feeling about the transatlantic relations? Do you think they are at stake? Should be the transatlantic relations rethinked? And what is your vision of the future for Europe?
Well, I have a non-emotional view of the transatlantic relations. Well, the United States are, of course, a global superpower, and well, we have to have relations with them. However, I do cherish democracy above all. When I look at what the US democracy has become, I really wonder why we would need to have a special relationship with it. Case in point, the average US congressman, so congressman or senator, has a wealth of on average $14 million. This is what I call the definition of plutocracy, you know, the government of the rich. Well, of the people by the rich, actually. Well, on top of that, an average electoral campaign in the US costs $10 million. And it's not every 5 years, it's every other year, except for senators. But for the 435 congressmen, it's every other year. So each elected member of the House has to find $10 million every other year. You do not find that with crowdfunding. The only way to fund your campaigns is big business or small business, but usually big business funding it. which means that actually not only it's become a plutocracy, but actually it has been completely captured by private interests. So why should we Europeans, with a very imperfect democracy as well, I mean, well, we are seeing the interests of big business, the interests of the 1% taking over in Europe, but still you can get elected in national and the European Parliament without needing their money. Well, why should we make them a special partner and enter into such an agreement as TTIP, which actually goes way beyond a trade agreement? It's not a trade agreement. It's an agreement to basically put the national legislations and the European legislations that we have, the federal and the state legislations that US have in the US, in competition with each other on taxation standards, social standards, environmental standards, health standards, and all the rest of it. A competition whose arbiters would be the multinationals. They would play one against the other. Is this what we want? I'm saying no. I mean, the big business has already captured the US democracy. They are trying to capture the European democracy, but, well, I would say over my dead body.
What is your vision of the future for Europe? Are you in favor of the United States of Europe? You are a federalist? Or,
Yes, I'm a federalist European. Again, I'm looking at facts. Who are we Europeans? 7% of the global population, and tomorrow, by 2050, will be 5%. Altogether. If we want to regain sovereignty, and I mean democratic sovereignty, in the face of the interests of globalized enterprises, the only way to do that is by acting together. Do you believe that if even the French government, so France will be 1% of the global population, not even, when the French government goes after Google, well, that's maybe an annoyance for Google, but that's basically it. When the European Union together is going after Google and saying, guys, the rules of the game in Europe are this, this, and this. You don't fulfill them, you're not welcome here. Well, Google pays attention because, well, they have to, because this is still a market of half a billion people and not the poorest on the planet, even if we have 25% of Europeans who are poor. But, well, there's the rest who are not. And therefore, it's only together that we can be strong. The motto of my country is l'union fait la force, well, strength in unity. I believe that should be the motto of Europe. That's only together that we can do it. And despite the fact that the policies that are carried out in Europe are really geared towards a minority, this does not suppress the fact that we have to act together if we want to be relevant to ourselves and to the rest of the world. Now, so we need to deepen the European integration and at the same time steer its course in a totally different direction that puts actually environmental sustainability, social justice at the heart of the project. And by the way, social justice, or say a sense of shared prosperity, was at the heart of the European project. And for the first 30 years, what we've seen is a reduction in inequality because, first elections have been open to every citizen. Don't forget that women in many countries didn't vote before World War II, but then social security was expanded and a progressive taxation system across Europe, which allowed to compress the inequality. So yes, we put the market economy at the service of, well, say, a shared prosperity. No longer. I mean, since the ultra-liberal revolution that started with Thatcher and Reagan in the 80s, it's something completely different that took place. So yes, we kept having growth for the next 30 years, but it was growth serving, well, a narrow slice of our population, and this is not something that we accept. So yes, we need to change the course of the European integration, but I do not side with those who say that we should step back to nation states, because, well, the strength of nation states against the interest of globalized businesses is close to zero.
Philippe Lamberts, thank you very much.
My pleasure.